That's when the long-lost system reappeared, on the third year of my wife's betrayal, telling me I could finally go home. During those last 10 days, I stopped fighting and arguing with her. I let her stay out all night with her lover. I let her give away the things I cherished in. The day I left was my birthday. She burst in with her lover, knocked over my cake, and pinned me against the window by my throat. She screamed, asking why I had harmed their child. "When did you become so cruel?" I laughed, too tired to explain anything anymore. "Yes," I said quietly. "I'm that cruel. So, go ahead. Be happy with him." Under her stunned gaze, I turned and jumped from the 19th floor, ending everything I had in this world. Chapter 1. When the long-absent system reappeared and told me I could go home. I had just finished another fierce argument with Daisy. She had just come back from a passionate rendezvous with the college boy she was sponsoring, Daniel. Seeing me lying on the bed, she came over and hugged me from behind, her lips, still warm, brushed against my neck again and again. I sat up straight and instinctively pushed her away. "Daisy, if you don't feel disgusted." "I do." She froze for a moment, touched her face self-deprecatingly, then suddenly yanked me up. She shook me against the mirror above the sink, gripping my chin tightly, her eyes full of venom. "You're disgusted with me, Christopher. Look at yourself. Do you even resemble who you once were?" I looked at the man in the mirror. Hair messy, beard unkempt, dark circles and bags heavy beneath my eyes. I looked like a homeless man. The eyes that once shone with sunlight had turned dull and lifeless. Fine lines had crept over my face, erasing every trace of youth. At a moment, Daniel's face flashed across my mind. Young, wild, burning with desire and ambition, his eyes challenging me. "So this is your reason for cheating, Daisy?" I leaned against the wall with a bitter laugh, my eyes stinging. She slowly stepped closer, standing on tiptoe to wipe away the moisture at the corner of my eyes with her fingertip. "I've said it more than once. I'm just having fun. When I get tired, I'll come back. Christopher, I've always loved you." Disgust. Unbearable, suffocating disgust. I screamed in rage, unable to contain it anymore. I grabbed a bottle and hurled it at the mirror. It shattered into countless pieces. "Get out. Get the hell out." After she left, I stood barefoot on the cold marble floor, staring out the window at the giant LED screen where Daisy had paid to display a huge modeling photo of Daniel. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. These confrontations had played out countless times over the past year, from the beginning's heart-wrenching pain to the numb despair that was left now. I was never meant to belong to this world. 8 years ago, I came here on a mission to redeem a broken and bitter woman named Daisy. Back then, her father had cheated, the family business had collapsed, her mother had killed herself, leaving her with crushing debt. Her eyes were empty, lifeless. I came to her then, one sunny morning, and approached that fragile, pitiful girl. Later, I stayed with her in a basement room, shared simple meals, and helped her pay off every debt one by one. She once asked me, confused, "Why are you so good to me?" I smiled and took her hand. "Maybe it's heaven's instruction." She lowered her head and whispered, "Then that must be the best gift heaven ever gave me." The day the mission was completed, she must have known I was going to leave. She held me from behind, eyes red, and didn't sleep all night. I couldn't bring myself to leave. I held her and said softly, "Daisy, I'm not going home." From that day on, the system disappeared completely. For 5 whole years, it never appeared again. And during those 5 years, Daisy betrayed me. In the 3rd year of our marriage, she started keeping a young, handsome male model. His name was Daniel. Chapter 2. I still remember the day I discovered her affair. She came home drunk, collapsed against me, and mumbled H-A-Z-I-L-Y. "Christopher, you've gotten fatter." I laughed then, thinking she was being silly. I kept training for years, my body was well balanced, my weight unchanged. How could I have gotten fat? Later, when I looked through her phone, I found out about Daniel, the young man she was sponsoring. He was 6 feet tall, lean, fair-skinned, carrying that youthful air completely different from mine. And the Christopher she had murmured that night, was it really me she was talking to, or Daniel? I stood up and most details of that day have faded. All I remember is the roar in my head and the world spinning into chaos. Daisy knelt before me, crying uncontrollably, saying it was just a moment of novelty, a mistake. 3 years of love, 3 years of marriage, and my decision to stay in this world instead of going home, all lead to this ending. I couldn't accept it, but couldn't let us go so easily. So, we silently agreed to keep the marriage going, but rotten love, like a rose full of maggots. was too hard to throw away, yet sickening to keep. In her repeated betrayals we fought, resented, tore each other apart, until both of us were raid, our hearts dead and hollow. Like being cut by a dull knife, it slowly wore out the last remnants of love. So in a long knife, dormant system finally woke and spoke to me again. I didn't hesitate. System, I said, I regret it. I want to go home. Chapter 3. Host, I warned you back then. The system replied. The story that follows a mission can never be predicted, including Daisy's change of heart. However, considering your excellent past performance, I can grant you a special privilege. I'll open a path home for you again, but the time will be 10 days from now. I nodded, exhausted. Very well. You have 10 days left in this world. The countdown to departure begins, and the system disappeared once more. The house fell back into its deadly silence. I wiped away my tears and began to pack. I no longer wanted to leave a single trace of myself in this world. I packed all my clothes and threw them into the trash. Then I took down every wedding photo of Daisy near me from the walls and pulled out the ring I had once given her. I'd knelt before her with that 70-point diamond. Tiny, but it had cost me everything I owned. My voice had trembled as I said, Daisy, will you marry me? She had cried in my arms. Christopher, you are the only light in my dark life. In this lifetime, I will stay faithful only to you. That small diamond had carried the weight of our deepest love. I'd worn it ever since, until the day I saw her holding Daniel's R, a 5.5-carat pink diamond sparkling on her hand. From that day on, my ring stayed buried in a drawer. I picked up the diamond ring and hurled it at the wedding photo. The glass shattered instantly. Finally, as I stood there staring at the home filled with the traces of our life together, I felt something inside me loosen. I had been unwilling to let go of this sick, decaying marriage for 5 long years. Now at last, being able to leave was a kind of relief. Chapter 4. The next morning, I went downstairs. The lights in the house were dim. Daisy was sitting on the sofa, sipping her herbal tea, her expression unreadable. Where are the wedding photos on the wall? Her calm voice stopped me. Her phone kept vibrating, the notifications chiming non-stop. It was Daniel texting her, holding the brand new watch he had just received, smiling with satisfaction. Darling, didn't I do great last night? I'll make sure I perform even better today with the gift you gave me. She noticed I'd seen the messages. Yet she made no effort to hide them, the phone's screen glowing brazenly in the dark room. I put them away, I said evenly, walking past her toward the kitchen to pour myself a glass of water. She curved her lips into a faint smile. She stood up and pulled out a Van Cleef Arpels des Amara watch from her pocket. She reached for my wrist to put it on. Still angry. Here, the peace offering. It looks good on you. She leaned in close, whispering in my ear, her voice like a snake flicking its tongue. You'll always be my husband. No one can replace you, not even Daniel. When I get bored of him, I'll give you another child. How about that? I pushed her away coldly and brushed my hand against her collar. The scent of another man's cologne still clinging there. A faint, bitter smile twisted my lips. Then I turned and left. Chapter 5. Daisy once had a child. But back then, even she didn't know she was pregnant. At that time, I was still obsessed with her. With her loyalty I couldn't let go. So I waited outside the hotel where she and Daniel were staying, sitting in my car the entire night. At dawn, I saw her come out with Daniel, his hand resting possessively on her hip as he pushed her into the passenger seat. Moments later, the two of them were already lost in each other inside the car. That was when I lost control. I gripped the steering wheel, my mind blank, and slammed the car straight into them. The child was gone that day, but during that period Daisy and I hadn't shared a bed at all. The child's father needed no explanation. She slapped me hard across the face and forced me to kneel and apologize. That was the 4th time I caught her still seeing him. She looked startled but didn't seem to sense anything unusual, just nodded absently and went out again. For the next 2 days she didn't come home. I watched the endless tabloid news of her and Daniel splashed across the headlines, attached without making a single call or sending a single text. Instead, I started selling off everything we owned. The houses, the jewelry, all of it. Because the system had told me I could still use my exchange rights, the wealth I accumulated in this world could be transferred back to my original one. During the first 2 years of our marriage, Daisy and I had worked hard together and built enormous wealth. Those were the happiest days, the days when our love was still burning. I transferred my entire company to her name. Every property she bought, she registered under mine. She said she felt guilty that after I pulled her from the abyss and endured hardship beside her, The only thing she could do to ease her guilt was to give me everything. In the end, she didn't give me enough love, but she gave me more money than I could ever spend, enough to live a lifetime even after returning home. When there were 5 days left on the countdown, I drove out to the suburbs. There was only one villa left, the deed not yet sold. It had been Daisy's anniversary gift to me when we were still in love. We'd spent every holiday there together. To us, that villa had meant everything. I went there that day to retrieve the deed and hand it over to a real estate agent. As I drove through the quiet neighborhood, I realized I hadn't been there once since Daisy's betrayal 2 years ago. Yet the place looked completely renewed. The small garden outside the villa was now filled with blooming roses. Confused, I stepped out of the car and unlocked the door. Before I could open it fully, someone opened it from the inside. "What? You're hungry again already?" It was Daniel. Chapter 6. He stood there shirtless, leaning lazily against the doorframe, a flicker of surprise flashing across his face. But it faded quickly. His mocking eyes scanned me up and down, full of scorn and arrogance. In that instant, I understood everything. Daisy had been keeping him here. "This is my house," I said coldly. "I'll give you 5 minutes. Get dressed and get out." I pushed the door open to go inside, but Daniel blocked the way, his gaze meeting mine without a hint of fear. "But Daisy gave this house to me," he said with a smirk. "Gave it to you? When did the ownership change? You think the owner wouldn't know? It was only lent to you for a few days. You're nothing but a squatter pretending to be the master." His face flushed red, then pale, his jaw tightening. I didn't bother arguing further. I called Daisy directly. "Her mess, her responsibility." She chuckled softly on the other end. "Christopher, it's just a house. What's wrong with letting my boy toy stay there for a few days? Don't cause him trouble. If you make him cry, I'll be hard to coax later." I didn't hear the rest of what she said because Daniel suddenly grabbed my wrist, leaning in even closer, his voice dripping with mockery. "Mr. Christopher, I heard you and Daisy dated for 3 years before marrying." "Well, I've been with Daisy for 3 years too." He paused deliberately, his smile widening. "So tell me, do you think this year I'll become Daisy's official husband?" He spoke slowly, savoring every word. "And let me raise the stakes with the child Daisy is carrying." On the other end of the line, I could still hear Daisy casually shuffling cards, her voice careless and airy. "A few days ago, there was a limited edition life-size figure at an auction. I bought it for you. Your birthday's in today's, consider it a gift. As for Daniel, he's just my little canary, a bit of amusement. If you don't like it, fine. I'll make him move out." She kept talking, her tone nonchalant, dismissive, almost playful. I laughed bitterly, my voice trembling. "Daisy, did you hear me? You're pregnant with your canary's little chick. Congratulations. You're finally going to be a mother. You've gotten exactly what you wanted." On the other end of the phone, Daisy's voice was silent for a long time. She said nothing at all. Chapter 7. When Daisy found me, I had just come back from the cemetery. There were only 3 days left before my departure. Daniel's words had brought back memories of that child, the one I had once believed was mine, the one I had poured all my love and care into, only to realize, no matter how I calculated the dates, it could never have been mine. In the past few days, I had gone to that child's grave and brought candy to leave there. I knew the truth. I knew the child wasn't mine, but the bond I'd once felt refused to break. If everything hadn't fallen apart, Daisy and I might have had a lovely child of our own. I hadn't gone home. I didn't answer Daisy's calls. It was as if I had vanished from the world. So when she finally found me, she grabbed my arm without a word and dragged me into her car. Inside the car, she gripped the steering wheel tightly and stared at me with dark, restless eyes. Her impatient voice broke the silence. "I'll take care of the Daniel situation." I remembered something Daisy once told me: a child should be born from love with the one you love most. In this life, I'll only have a child with you. And yet now, she and Daniel had created one together. Still, she sat here pretending to act devoted, as if we could return to the past. It was laughable. I crossed my arms and looked out the window. What does that have to do with me? It's not my child anyway. Her expression froze and twisted into a half smile. She suddenly grabbed my wrist, forcing me to turn toward her. "Christopher, do you really not care at all?" Her eyes reddened at the corners, locked on me as if afraid to miss even a flicker of emotion. "And where have you been these past few days?" "You did these past few days." But my face remained expressionless. I looked at her quietly and spoke in a soft, steady voice. "Daisy, Daisy, Daisy, I'm going home. The air inside the car felt completely still. After a long silence, she let out a short, cold laugh, a sound like disbelief, like mockery. She sneered. "Where can you go? You don't have a home other than me. Do you even have anyone left in this world?" Chapter 8. I looked at her quietly, my eyes teemed with bitter irony. So this was what love became in the end, venomous words and wounds that never stopped bleeding. I took a deep breath, realizing there was nothing left to say to her, and got out of the car. Daisy slammed her hands against the steering wheel and drove away, tires screeching into the night. Once again, we parted in anger. In the final 3 days, she grew increasingly reckless. Sometimes she would even bring Daniel home for the night, the sounds from their room echoing through the house. And I simply closed my door in silence. Not a word, not a question. The last day before my departure was my birthday. That morning, Daisy left early without even glancing at me. The whole day, I stayed home alone, burning every photo of us one by one. Then, I waited quietly, patiently for midnight to arrive. At night, I bought myself a small cake. I stuck the candles in one by one. Then I turned off the lights, closed my eyes, clasped my hands together, and made a wish. I wished I could go home safely and that I would never see Daisy again. But before I could blow out the candles, I heard the door open. Daisy walked in, her face pale, her eyes cold. Daniel followed behind her, his expression burning with fury. Before I could react, his fist struck my face hard. "Christopher, I know you don't like me," he spat. "But Daisy is innocent. The baby is innocent. Why would you hurt her?" I touched my stinging cheek and let out a low, humorless laugh. Honestly, I had no idea what he was talking about. I hadn't gone anywhere today. But Daniel's punch, that was Daisy's doing. She stood aside, one hand on her stomach, sneering. "Christopher, was that really necessary? You've already killed one of my children, and now you send someone to run me over to kill my second?" Her words cut deep, sharp as a blade, slicing open old scars that had barely begun to heal. But I had no time left for her accusations. The system's voice echoed faintly in my mind. The countdown was almost over. I stepped forward, past Daisy, and slapped Daniel across the face. That slap was repayment for the punch he'd thrown at me, and for being a third wheel in my marriage for 3 long years. If I didn't hit him now, I'd never get another chance. Daniel froze for a moment, then his eyes reddened, blinking back tears he refused to shed. Daisy rubbed her temples, exhaled sharply, and then with a sharp tug, ripped the tablecloth away. Bang! The crash of breaking plates and shattering glass filled the air, echoing through the house. The cake, along with everything on the table, tumbled to the floor, broken into pieces. Just like our 5-year marriage. She stepped closer, her 10-centimeter heels barely letting her meet my chin. The softness that had once lingered in her eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, indifferent sharpness thinner than any knife. "I told you I'd take care of it," she said icily. "So why did you have to provoke us again? Christopher, when did you become this low, this vicious? Or is this all just another act? Your way of pretending so you can go home?" Behind me, the window stood wide open. 19 stories below, the city light shimmered, and the night wind rushed in like a tide. Then, as the clock struck midnight, the system's voice returned. Calm, mechanical, certain. "The passage home is opened. Once the host completes death in this world, return to the original world will be initiated." I laughed softly and brushed Daisy's hand away. My tone was gentle. "Yes," I said, "I really am that vicious." Daisy frowned, confusion flickering in her eyes. I lifted a hand and pointed toward Daniel, offering him a small, almost peaceful smile. "So I'll step aside. You and your Daniel can be together." Then, under Daisy's gaze, I leaned back and jumped from the 19th floor. Chapter 9. 5 minutes later, downstairs, the crowd had gathered. Police officers, doctors, and bystanders. But they found no victim. No body. To be precise, the empty ground below the building didn't even have a trace of blood. "Miss Lee, are you certain your husband jumped from the 19th floor?" One officer approached cautiously, addressing Daisy Lee. She stood there, head tilted upward, eyes red and swollen, staring at the half-open window on the 19th floor. The night rain fell in fine droplets, pattering against her face, soaking her hair. I saw him jump with my own eyes. "How could he?" she murmured, her voice trembling. "Had he searched the lower platforms? The second-floor balcony, maybe? Did he have landed somewhere else?" Her voice suddenly rose with desperate hope. The officer sighed, shaking his head gently. We've already searched every possible place. There's no one. Not even a trace. At this point, even the police didn't know how to handle the situation. Both Daisy and Daniel had testified that they saw Christopher jump from the 19th floor, and yet, not a single strand of hair was found on the scene. It was as if he had vanished from the human world completely. Silently. Daniel was still pale, trembling under the blanket draped over his shoulders. He had seen it with his own eyes, a living man leaping into the void. From such a height, anyone would have been crushed to pieces. But that man had simply disappeared. He shivered uncontrollably as he walked toward Daisy, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Let's go home," he whispered, voice shaking. "Today's been so strange. I'm scared." Before he could finish, Daisy's hand came crashing across his face. The slap was far harder than the one Christopher had given him earlier. The force made Daniel's head spin. He nearly lost his footing. Daisy's expression was dark and cold as she stepped closer. Even as a woman, her presence carried the weight and authority of someone used to power. She grabbed him by the throat, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Who told you to hit my husband?" Daniel bit his lip hard, eyes watering. "Didn't you say we were coming to confront him?" "I said I'd back you up," she hissed. "But you walked in and hit him." "I never agreed to that." Her grip tightened unconsciously, her knuckles whitening. Daniel began to gasp for breath. "Daniel," she said through clenched teeth, "if you hadn't insisted on making a scene for the child's justice, if you hadn't pushed so hard today, Christopher wouldn't have." Her voice trembled, but her fury didn't waver. "I was going to end this pregnancy anyway. In this life, I'll only ever bear children for Christopher." Daniel's eyes widened in horror, tears spilling freely. He wanted to scream, to undo every word he'd said, every demand he'd made. His throat tightened under her grip, his breath fading. With the last of his strength, he pried her fingers loose and croaked out a hoarse sentence. "Daisy, you're still carrying our child." The way he said her name, Daisy, made her freeze. Christopher used to call her that, gently, lovingly. The same way. She blinked, coming back to her senses, and released him. But when she looked up, it wasn't Christopher's face she saw. It was Daniel's, weak from suffocation, coughing violently. For a moment, Daisy just stared, dazed, her mind blank. Around her, the world was chaos. Police radios crackling, voices rising, rain falling harder. But in the crowd of faces, there was only one she searched for and couldn't find. Reality crashed down on her, raw and merciless. Her Christopher, the man she had loved, hated and destroyed, had jumped from the 19th floor before her eyes. No one knew where he had gone. Panic set in. She stumbled backward, tears and rain mixing on her face, and fled toward the car, running from the crowd, from the truth, from the emptiness he'd left behind. Chapter 10. Inside the car, she curled up in the driver's seat, trembling as she lit an 80s cigarette. Only then did she manage to calm down a little. She stretched out her hand and stared at it blankly. As moments ago, this very hand had almost strangled Daniel to death in a haze of confusion. Suddenly, a long-buried memory surfaced. A rainy night many years ago, where she had used the same hand to grip another man's throat with all her strength. That man was her biological father. At 19, her father's affair was exposed by the media. The Lee Corporation was thrown into scandal, its stock price plummeting. The man, however, chose to run away with his mistress, leaving behind an enormous mountain of debt for her and her mother. Overnight, the Lee family went bankrupt. Unable to bear the despair, took her own life. Later, one night, she cornered the man who was about to flee and lost control, choking him with both hands, her eyes bloodshot. It was Christopher who suddenly rushed forward, seizing her hands. "Daisy, no. Don't do this. If you kill him, your life will be ruined forever." Daisy could still remember how heavy the rain was that night, so loud that all she could hear was the downpour in Christopher's heart, wrenching cries. In the end, she let go. Christopher held her, trembling, and the longer he held her, the tighter his embrace became. Under Christopher's persuasion, she chose to abandon the thought of avenging her mother through murder and decided to live on. And as time passed, life slowly began to improve. Eventually, she found evidence of the man's crimes during his business ventures and personally sent him to prison. At last, she fully took over the Lee Corporation, rebuilding it step by step into a thriving empire. Christopher accompanied her to countless business dinners, started his own company to help her attract clients and open new markets. They earned more and more money. Finally, she married the man she loved most in this life. Smoke swirled inside the car, and a crimson ash from the cigarette fell, burning Daisy's hand. She snapped out of her memories, but her eyes were already wet. Chapter 11. When Daisy returned home, It was already deep into the night. She had just come back from the police station, where she cooperated with the investigation. In the end, all she brought home was a missing persons report. Since Christopher's body hadn't been found, the police couldn't issue a death certificate, only declare him missing. Miss Lee, once the disappearance has lasted 2 years, you can come back to request a death certificate. Daisy Lee slumped onto the sofa, letting out a cold laugh as she tossed the report aside. What death certificate? He's probably just playing some twisted game with me again. He just wants me to come home. Her gaze dropped to the floor. There lay the cake she had knocked over herself earlier. The window was still open, and a sharp cold wind howled through. Everything around her reminded her that what had happened wasn't a dream. Her Christopher really had jumped right here, right in front of her. A chilling cold crept up from her feet, winding its way through her body, piercing straight into her heart. She couldn't stay in the living room another second. Fleeing, she stumbled back to her bedroom. She lay dazed on the bed, but her mind kept replaying the same scene, Christopher smiling at her before falling backward into the void. Her head began to throb violently. The pain was so intense she had to pound her own temples just to suppress it. Her migraines, those were remnants from years ago. Back then, she had been drowning in debt, juggling multiple jobs a day until her body gave out. But every time she came home after an exhausting day, she was greeted by the face she longed to see. Tired like her, but warm, tall, dependable. And suddenly, she didn't feel so tired anymore. If she thought about it now, that place wasn't even a real home, just a cramped, shabby basement. In winter, the wind and water leaked through the cracks. In summer, there were cockroaches and rats. But her Christopher never once complained. That tiny basement, under his care, somehow felt cozy. They would lie together on the wooden bed, her head resting on his leg while he gently massaged her temples. One night, as he did that same soothing motion, she suddenly noticed his hands. Those long, once clean fingers were now covered in red blisters, some already raw and festering. In that moment, something sharp twisted deep inside her chest. The pain made her gasp for air. She remembered that night clearly. How she took his hands, heart-taking, and swore to him word by word. "Christopher, I'll make sure you live a good life. I promise." And she did. She succeeded. The Lee Corporation rose again under her command. Her Christopher, once a nameless nobody, built his own empire from scratch until he stood shoulder to shoulder with her in the business world. From a basement to a small apartment, then to a luxury flat, and finally a villa. They had climbed their way up together. But somewhere along the way, she lost herself in the glitter and the temptations of wealth. Even when Christopher found out about her cheating with the male model she'd been secretly keeping, and they fought, screaming and breaking things, she never thought she'd done anything wrong. She told herself it was just for fun. After all, she'd been so repressed for so long, wasn't it natural to seek a bit of thrill, a taste of something new? All the rich women around her did the same, keeping young lovers, toy boys to cure their boredom. Who knew what their husbands were doing outside anyway? No one ever made such a fuss. No one went as far as divorce or suicide. She couldn't understand as long as she wanted, they could have been together forever. Always. Forever. How did things end up like this, his life or death now uncertain? Daisy seemed to have forgotten that back then, when she worked herself to the bone to escape the mud. It was all for one reason, so that she and her Christopher could be together and love each other until the end of their days. Chapter 12. When I woke up again, I was lying on a familiar bed. My head still throbbed faintly. Sometimes, the most unexpected turns in life can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Finally able to breathe again. Beside me, my phone chimed. An amount of 80 million yen has been deposited into your account. 80 million. I tightened my grip on the phone, dazed, slowly raising my head. So everything that had happened before wasn't a dream. It was real. 8 years ago, while working on a construction site, I accidentally fell from a great height and injured my spine, leaving me paralyzed from the waist down. That night, the system appeared for the first time. It said that if I could complete a redemption mission, I would be rewarded with a healthy body. I agreed, and that was how my 8-year journey with Daisy began. I had returned to my original world. Not only had I regained a healthy body, but I had also received an immense fortune. There would be no more endless quarrels and tearing apart of each other's hearts. No more lonely nights crying into my pillow. No more suffocating marriage where every breath felt like drowning. I took a deep breath, my eyes glistening. The feeling of freedom, it was wonderful. Chapter 13. My life in this world didn't change much. The only difference was that now, I had more money than I could ever spend. a true financial freedom. Between bouts of work, I began to enjoy traveling alone. Sometimes to the misty rivers and bridges of Jiangding, sometimes to the vast northern deserts where a lone plume of smoke rose into the sky. Every landscape filled me with endless joy. I even bought a traditional Chinese courtyard house by the lake. From the floor-to-ceiling window in my bedroom, I could see the glittering ripples of the water. On days when I wasn't traveling, I would lounge lazily in a hanging chair by the window, basking in the sunlight with a book in my hands. A little cat would often jump into my lap, purring softly. No one would come home with a cold face anymore. No one would shout at me, or grab my face and force me to look in the mirror, asking what kind of monster I'd become. To bring back the Christopher who was once bright, open, and full of life. Reality is peaceful now. In a world without Daisy, every single day is a sunny day. Chapter 14. 2 years later, I had almost let those memories fade. Until that day, I just finished drinking and chatting with the guys and wandered home, hazy and tired, collapsing onto my bed. The system came knocking again. When I heard its voice, I thought I was just drunk and mishearing, until that same white light appeared before my eyes. Host, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's no other way. Because I took it upon myself to grant you a special privilege to return home. The heroine, Daisy, has never found your body and still can't accept the truth. As her obsession deepens, her world is on the verge of collapse. If that other world collapses, I, as the system, will be punished, permanently sealed and deleted. Please help me go back one more time and completely dissolve the fixation in her heart. This time, you won't need to complete any tasks, and you won't be staying there for good. You'll only have 5 hours. When the 5 hours end, no matter the outcome, I'll bring you back. The system showed me slices of Daisy's life. She went to work as usual, handling company affairs, but her temper had grown mercurial, and the staff moved on eggshells every day, terrified of making mistakes. Even the vases in her office had been replaced dozens of times. Because of this, she would often be left alone. Occasionally, a partner would mention my death in front of her, even trying to offer her another man. She would fix them with an icy stare and warn them, enunciating each word them. I am not dead. They would panic, glance at each other, and flee. Afterward, she'd ask her assistant whether I had messaged her that day. I was silent. I didn't feel moved, my heart was as still as water. But, hearing the system's near pleading voice, I couldn't help remembering how it had kept me company through those 8 lonely years, guiding me through world after world, mission after mission. In the end, when it should have gone to sleep, it heard my cry for help and, at the cost of breaking the rules, opened the privilege to send me home. Not just a friend, more than a friend. After thinking it through, I agreed. Back then my farewell to Daisy had been too sudden. Love and hate were angled so tightly that even our parting was laced with aim. I chose the most brutal way to die in front of her. No wonder she still can't let go. I would end it properly. Cut off her lingering hope and let her truly give up. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in that other world. Back in the home Daisy and I once shared. It was already late. The lights were off, the place sat silent and empty. 2 years apart. And I had nearly forgotten everything here. No, yet, every piece of furniture reminded me, unmistakably, that I had lived in this place for 8 whole years. Nothing in the house had changed. It was exactly as I'd left it. Even the wedding photo I'd once scored with a diamond ring had been restored by Daisy and hung back on the living room wall. Only now later, because I was gone, my half of the picture had been left blank. I stepped into the bedroom. My pillow still lay side by side with Daisy's, as if I had never left. Even my favorite book rested quietly on the nightstand where I used to keep it. I picked up the book and opened it. The pages were yellowed, the corners slightly curled, every sheet marked with traces of having been turned plus times. The system had once told me that after I left, on every sleepless night, Daisy would fall asleep clutching this very book. Because when I disappeared, everything connected to me vanished too. My clothes, my photos, even the smallest of my belongings. Only this book she had bought at a bookstore remained. The lines I'd underlined and notes I'd scribbled in the margins were the only proof I had ever existed. As I stood there lost in thought, a faint sound came from the entrance. The door opened. Daisy was home. After 2 years apart, her already striking features had grown sharper. Her beauty now carried a cold edge, and the darkness between her brows seemed to blend perfectly with the bleakness of winter outside. She changed her shoes, stepped in, and didn't even bother turning on the lights. She didn't notice me standing in the bedroom doorway. In the dimly lit living room, she sat down on the sofa and lit a cigarette. Once, she'd only smoked mint-flavored lady cigarettes. Now it was cheap, harsh ones from the convenience store. The ember flickered between her fingers, glowing and dimming in the wind. When the cigarette burned down, she picked up her phone, frowning as she scrolled through the day's messages. Back when she used to stay out all night, she would always find my messages annoying, always reading them and never replying. Later, I stopped texting altogether, stopped waiting for her to come home. She covered her face with one hand and let out a bitter laugh. 2 years. Christopher, you're really cruel. Not even a single message. How long are you planning to drag out this game? She exhaled heavily, stubbed out her cigarette, and turned her gaze to the window. Her eyes were dull, lifeless. Suddenly, the shrill ring of her phone shattered the silence. She hesitated when she saw the caller ID, but eventually answered. It's been exactly 2 years since your husband's disappearance. We're calling to remind you that you can now come to the station to apply for a death certificate. Daisy Lee's face went rigid. A storm raged, and the air around her turned icy cold. My husband isn't dead. You never found his body. And yet you tell me he's dead? I'll never fall for that trick. Her grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles whitened, nails digging deep into her palm. If anyone dares call me again about that death certificate, I'll make sure they're the ones who don't end well. She slammed the call shut and hurled the phone to the floor. Her fist crashed down onto the coffee table, the glass cracking under the blow. Head bowed low, her voice came out hoarse. How long are you going to punish me before you come back? I stood there watching her performance silently, a cold smile forming at the corner of my lips. What did she want me to come back for? To keep watching her entangle herself shamelessly with Daniel, or to let the darkness in my heart grow until it devoured me whole? After a long pause, I finally stepped out of the bedroom. My voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. But keep deceiving yourself. Daisy? Chapter 15. The moment my voice sounded, Daisy's entire body trembled. Slowly, she turned her head toward me and froze. She stared blankly for a long time, as if her mind couldn't catch up with her eyes. Then, light began to flicker in the depths of her gaze. She took a cautious step forward, then another, as though afraid that any sudden movement would shatter this fragile dream. Her trembling hands reached out, testing inch by inch, until she finally wrapped her arms around me completely. She buried her face against my neck, inhaling shakily, her voice hoarse and muffled. Christopher, you really scared me. They all said you were dead, but I didn't believe it. I just couldn't. I knew you'd come back. I finally waited long enough for you to return. I pushed her away coldly. My eyes on hers held no warmth, no trace of feeling. Daisy, I am dead. Did you forget? Right in front of you, I jumped from the 19th floor. I fell with my blessings for you and Daniel, while you stood there watching. Her long lashes trembled, confusion and fear flashed across her face. At last, she seemed to remember that I had died before her eyes. One moment I was speaking gently to her, and the next, I leaned backward into the abyss without hesitation, without regret, disappearing from her world completely. Her face turned paper white. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she grabbed my shoulders. No, that's impossible. Christopher, you're standing right here. You came back. After you left, I aborted Daniel's child. I cut all contact with him. I haven't seen him since. Christopher, can't we just start over? Please, let's have a good life together. I shook my head slowly, looking at her with calm detachment. Then I walked toward the very window I had jumped from 2 years ago. Pushing it open, I let the same icy wind brush against my skin. Daisy, do you still remember how we met? 8 years ago. The system had brought me to this world, and I appeared before Daisy when she was at her lowest. She had just lost her mother, been beaten and threatened by debt collectors, and stood on a rooftop, one foot already hanging over the edge. I fell from the sky quite literally, landing right on top of her. Supporting myself with my arms, I looked down at the lifeless girl beneath me and smiled. Don't jump. I can help you. In her eyes, once empty and dull, a faint spark of light returned. A flicker of life. At the time, she was too numb, too broken to question where I'd come from. Now, as I spoke, I saw the shock and confusion slowly spread across her face. Daisy, I never belonged to your world. I came to you only to complete my mission to save you. When the mission ended, I was supposed to return to my own world. But that year, I didn't because I fell in love with you. So I stayed, and I married you. Chapter 16. I glanced out the window. The night sky shimmered with stars, just as clear and bright as the night we got married. That night, Daisy held me in her arms and made her solemn promise. Christopher, you saved my life. You changed my destiny. If I ever betray you, May I be struck by a car the moment I walk out the door. Christopher. I swear, I'll make sure you live a good life. And I believed her. I gave her everything. My heart, my trust, my entire being. Later, she expanded the Lee Corporation, building it stronger and grander than ever. She kept her promise, at least for a while. And I became the polished, enviable husband of a powerful CEO. I didn't even have to manage my own company anymore, didn't have to endure hardship with her. All I had to do was stay home quietly, waiting for her, waiting for her, waiting for her to come back. Our conversations dwindled. Then came the late nights she didn't return home, and in the end, what I waited for wasn't happiness, but the headline news of her affair with that model Daniel. From that moment on, a crack formed between us. With every argument, every night of torment, that crack widened until it became what it is today, a vast canyon separating us. I on one side, she on the other, never to meet again. As the memories rushed back, pain clouded Daisy's face. Christopher, I'm sorry. All those years, you were always by my side. No matter how I changed, you never left me. I was too content, too confident, so much that I started craving something new, something different. I thought I could control everything. Whatever I wanted, I could have. I became unwilling to live an ordinary life anymore. I wanted to taste everything I'd never had before, including other men. Her head lowered, hands clenched tightly. I never thought you'd actually leave. After 8 years together, I thought you'd become dispensable in my life. But after that night, after you fell in front of me, I haven't had a full night's sleep since. Her body trembled as she lifted her gaze, reaching out, trying to take my hand. Christopher, I was wrong. I truly was. I shook her off coldly. Daisy, 2 years ago when you shoved me in front of the mirror and said I was old, said I wasn't who I used to be, there wasn't the slightest hesitation or pity in your eyes. I'll never forget the way her face lit up with unrestrained pleasure while she leaned into Daniel's arms. The thrill she couldn't hide, nor can I forget the grotesque expression of contempt and disgust she wore whenever we fought. The way she made me feel like a madman for daring to care. Love, like a flower, needs gentle care to grow. But she watered me with poison. With every drop of betrayal and deceit, she made me wither. Daisy's eyes were bloodshot. So red they seemed ready to bleed. No, it's not like that. I was just angry back then. Out of control. I didn't mean it. Christopher, I've only ever loved you. Always. I said, my tone cold and steady. You keep claiming you never had feelings for Daniel. But is that really true? You gave him money, you gave him time, you gave him your favoritism. If that isn't love, then what is it? You say you love me, but your love for me wasn't the indifference, the arguments, the endless fighting? If that's what you call love, then I don't want it. She swore she never cared about Daniel, that it was all just a game. But she gave him money, took him shopping through Europe, bought him cars and luxury brands, without a flicker of hesitation. She gave him time, nursed him when he was sick, called him over whenever thunder frightened her. But she gave him protection. Every time we argued, she sided with her golden canary, shielding him while pushing me away. So many moments, so many choices made without thinking, how could there have been no affection behind them? By now, Daisy had fallen to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I glanced at the clock. There was only 1 minute left of my 5-hour return. Daisy seemed to sense it too. She noticed me standing once again by the window's edge, just as before, as she reached out, trembling, desperate to hold on. Christopher, please, don't leave me. Don't abandon me again. In my year, the system began its countdown. Daisy, I said softly, I came back for these last 5 hours, because we only truly loved each other for 5 years. We did love once, but that love no longer exists. Somewhere beyond human comprehension, it felt as though Daisy had traded 5 years of her life for my brief 5-hour return. But that was all it was. 5 hours. No more love left to carry us even one step further. You are the only one who can save her. And with those final words, I vanished once more before her eyes, leaving her alone, kneeling in the vast emptiness of that house, sobbing until her voice broke, and the echoes of her grief became the only sound that filled the night. Chapter 17. After Christopher left, Daisy collapsed onto the cold floor where he had stood, staring blankly at the ceiling, motionless. 2 years ago, when Christopher vanished before her eyes, she could still lie to herself. If there was no body, there was no death. But now, she knew, Christopher was gone for good. In this world, she would never see him again. They'd walked together for 8 long years. The most precious years of her life, all spent with him. It was his arrival that had made her believe in love again and taught her little by little how to love someone. Her life's plan had been simple: marry Christopher, have a child, live happily ever after. She had married him. The fate sometimes is nothing more than a cruel dash between the sentences. A love story that begins anew, only to end in a completely different chapter. All the beauty between them stopped abruptly in their 3rd year of marriage. That night, when the young model with ambition burning in his eyes leaned toward her, she dashed his name almost instinctively. Daniel. Daniel. She let him stay. After that, she kept doing things she couldn't even explain herself. By the time she came to her senses, there was no going back. She remembered she and Christopher had once had a child too. But before she could ever feel the joy of motherhood, that child was gone. Because of her own betrayal that night, she'd been with Daniel too passionately, too recklessly. She hadn't dared tell Christopher. Later, Daniel told her she was pregnant. At first she was afraid, confused, even panicked, but the joy of new life blurred her reason. And in that haze, she actually believed Daniel's lie. It was Christopher who had sent someone to hurt her, to kill her and their unborn child. It was that one moment of madness, that clouded mind, that made Christopher step off the 19th floor and disappear from her life for the whole years. When she finally learned the truth, that it had all been Daniel's jealousy and lies, she panicked. She rushed to end the pregnancy, hoping foolishly that maybe somehow Christopher would forgive her. Later, Daniel accused her over and over, calling her cruel, saying she had ruined his life, that people everywhere whispered about him. But Daisy had only smiled coldly from above. From the moment you chose to be my affair, the Christopher hiding somewhere in the shadows could see her remorse. But after 2 years of waiting, what she received was not forgiveness, but the final blow to her heart. No one knew how much time passed before Daisy finally rose from the floor. Slowly, she walked to the open window. She looked down. Darkness. A bottomless abyss. And she remembered when her Christopher had jumped from here. He had done so without hesitation, without a single glance back. She spread her arms, closed her eyes, feeling the night wind rush past her face. He had said if he jumped, he would go home. So she jumped. Would she be able to see him again? A moment later, without the slightest hesitation, she leapt him and it hurt when he. 6-year life. With her death, the redemption mission of the hero and Daisy was finally complete. The broken world began to repair itself. The system exhaled a long, trembling sigh of relief, and in the rumble of collapsing space, a new cycle of missions quietly began.